So to everybody who has hopped on, thank you so much for joining our September webinar here at Realm of Caring Foundation. My name is Sasha Kelchaporn. I am Executive Director at Realm of Caring. And our webinar today is called the 5 Things Your Patients Need to Know About Cannabis. So while this webinar is intended to address specific questions of the healthcare practitioner community, we did want to open this up so anyone is free to join. If you are not a healthcare practitioner, thank you for being here. And everybody is invited to ask questions as well. At Realm of Caring, we've been getting many inquiries lately about practitioners wanting to offer the best care for their patients when it comes to cannabis. And therefore, they are wondering where to start. And so we thought it would be best to bring in someone from the medical community. So I was thrilled when a friend of Realm of Caring said yes. Dr. Swathi Varanasi was available to help us out. Dr. is an integrative pharmacist and co-founder, and is it Chief Scientific Officer at Element Apothec?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here and for putting together this presentation for us. And please, everybody, while you're watching, feel free to use that Q&A to ask questions. And at the end, I will bring those for Dr. Swathi to answer as well.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I can, should I share my screen with the deck?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, go for it.
Okay, everyone should see it.
Looks
Let's
good.
see if I do view slideshow. Can everyone still see it now?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Alrighty. Let me know if we have the go ahead to get going.
All right, we are good. No one says that way they can't see it, so hopefully everybody can. I can see it, so let's go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. And just so as to not just get distracted, which I can, I just turned the comments and the video off. So if you can't hear something or say something, please speak up. Okay.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Okay, so let's get started. So yes, thank you for the introduction, Sasha, and for having me. This is one of my favorite topics. And, when I was putting together this slide deck and thinking about what we could focus on today, initially we wanted to do only 5, but man, there are so many important key things to know about cannabis and about CBD in general. We'll just focus on CBD for today. There are just so many key things to know that you might hear a few more things than just 5 today, but it's definitely worth it. And I'm glad that this will be recorded. So whoever can't tune in live, then they can definitely get the recording. So just jumping right in. So what I wanted to start with is, what is integrative health? What is integrative health pharmacy? And I'm an integrative health pharmacist. It's something that's really important to me first to define what this means, because being in the integrative space, everyone kind of defines it a little bit differently. So integrative health to me really is the intersection of all the different possibilities for health, healing, and wellness. And you can see a lot of the examples of these modalities on this wheel that I created a few years ago. I updated it last year. And it really just encapsulates a lot of different things when it comes to health and wellness. And what I think is the most important thing with integrative health is patient-centered shared decision-making, which I did put on this wheel in the bottom right-hand corner. And it's putting the patient at the center of the discussion. And at the end of the day, figuring out and being a guide for the patient to demonstrate, okay, so you're, having issues with sleep. What of these many possibilities could we go forth and attack one by one? And I can lay out all these options, and then whatever works best for the patient. There might be a patient who's more interested in homeopathy or nutrition, or looking into their genomic profile, or interested in meditation or herbs like cannabis. So I think at the end of the day, it's important to figure out what your patient's treatment goals are, and then how we can best address them as healthcare professionals within integrative health. So yes, as you can see, of course, medical cannabis is featured on here because that is what we are going to talk about today. So what you need to know about cannabis, right? So the first thing is that cannabis is not new. And this is really important because this is something that I get questions about all the time. Where does cannabis come from? So cannabis actually originated, the first, sighting of it in any sort of text was actually from the BC era in China. And it has then since spread to Asia, to North America, to the UK, to Europe, and of course to North America. And so there is almost this thought within at least the medical sphere that, oh, is cannabis new? How come, all of a sudden it's gained this popularity? And the reason in the last few years why it's gained so much popularity is because of the Farm Bill, which is on the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And the Farm Bill was put forth in 2018. It's called the Agricultural Improvement Act, actually, but it's called Farm Bill for short. And one of the clauses of this bill talked about the incorporation of hemp-derived products in the, wide scheme vernacular of the market. And so since then, since 2018, that's why we've seen such a surge of, hemp derived brands, whether they're CBD brands or other types of brands. I mean, hemp can also be used in everything from, cloth, like clothing, but also bags. And there are a lot of other uses for it too. And so since then, there's really been a surge of the inclusion of all of this. But before that, the DEA put forth, the DEA, or the Drug Enforcement Administration, put forth, a schedule. And so you might have heard of this before, the schedules of the different medications. And so cannabis was put in Schedule 1. And by definition, Schedule 1 means that there's no therapeutic value for anything in that particular schedule 1. So that's, a lot of the illicit recreational drugs got put in that category. And then also there's no therapeutic value and that they have high abuse potential. And of course, in the past few years, and especially since the Farm Bill, we've seen such an influx of incredible research coming out that has really gone to show that perhaps that's not the best fit for cannabis, given that there is therapeutic value. That is, more and more research is coming out daily about it. So this is a little bit about a very, very brief history as to, cannabis is not new, and it's actually very much been a part of medicinal use for a long time. So the next thing is that there is research. Love to debunk this myth. So I have Raphael Mechoulam, or Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, I apologize, in the bottom right-hand corner here. He is known as one of the forefathers of cannabis research. He's the one who discovered cannabidiol, or CBD, as well as THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol. He's also been involved in a lot of minor cannabinoid research, as well as other things too. And so there is research, and there's a lot of ongoing research, and it's not at the same level necessarily as hundreds of randomized controlled trials like there would be for a lot of the prescription medications that are on the market right now. But that doesn't mean that there isn't current research and there isn't ongoing research. And I put some of the institutions like the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where Dr. Raphael Mechoulam is, and is a professor there. He runs his own lab. You can see photos of him right there. And then also the University of Mississippi was one of the first institutions in the US who actually got federal funding for cannabis-related research. And since there are many other universities I could add, like the University of California at San Diego, they have a big push and a big grant as well for cannabinoid-based research. So a lot more exciting things to come on this front, but I do think it's important to note that there is research, whether it has been published or it is ongoing, and that more information will come out to define where cannabis can flow within the medical regimens for patients. All right, and so the next thing is CBD and cannabis are not the same. Very important. So we think of cannabis as a plant, right? And not if we think, we should think of cannabis as a plant because it is. And, if we're thinking about cannabis as a plant or other herbs as plants as well, it would make sense that these plants have a lot of different components in them, a lot of different compounds. So they have cannabinoids, or let's talk about cannabis in particular. They have cannabinoids, they have polyphenols, they have bioactives, they have terpenes, and so many different things that you can find within a plant. And of course, this makes sense because plants are very diverse, complicated things. They're not just simplified to the point that we would look at a prescription medication, and most of the time those are just one isolated compound, sometimes two compounds. But cannabis, of course, is a complex plant, and CBD is one of the compounds that is found in the cannabis plant. So you might be wondering, okay, what is cannabis? What is hemp? What is marijuana? So they're all So let's break that down. Hemp and marijuana are two words that are used to describe types of cannabis plants. And so hemp plants tend to be higher in CBD content percentage wise. And those are the ones as per the Farm Bill that any, CBD product that you find at, a drugstore, for example, those will be all hemp derived. Whereas marijuana is used as if, there are, a lot of different cannabinoids in that plant. And generally, it's not CBD dominant, meaning there's not a massive percentage of CBD in contrast to maybe some other cannabinoids. So I hope that makes it at least a little clear on, the difference between cannabis, hemp, and marijuana, and also the fact that CBD and cannabis are not the same. Okay, so the next thing, I put C in cannabis is for complicated. This also applies to CBD, of course, and this is really because of a lot of the things I just mentioned, that there are a lot of different components within the cannabis plant, one of them being terpenes, polyphenols that I have on the top right-hand corner, and some more of the, details on the terpenes that are found in some of the, varying cannabis chemovars are on the bottom right-hand corner. So you have linalool there, and, all of these individually, there is research supporting their use. And so, as we look at how cannabis or how CBD could be potentially beneficial, maybe pairing CBD with some of these terpenes really could provide a lot of synergistic effects. And these synergistic effects is actually referred to as the entourage effect or the ensemble effect. And I might be getting ahead of myself. I think there might be a slide on this already, but it came up in conversation, so I'm just going to go with it. So the ensemble effect really means that if we're looking at the cannabis plant, that means that, all the different components that I was just talking about, terpenes, polyphenols, cannabinoids, everything all together, they all can really work in synergy. And if we think about, traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda, they do utilize cannabis as a medicinal plant. And this is because, if you look at the whole plant, you're getting a lot of the benefits of all these different compounds and how they work together, rather than isolating certain compounds in, let's say, a CBD product that might be only CBD. Right. And so this is called the entourage or the ensemble effect. And it just speaks to the fact that if we're looking at a plant on the whole, perhaps we can get better benefit from that rather than isolating certain components. And then I also have this image on the left side of the screen, and you can see, hopefully it's big enough for you to see on the screen, but there's CB1 and CB2 in parentheses. And another reason why cannabis can be very complicated is because it works with a lot of the different systems in the body, but in particular with the endocannabinoid system. And so CB1 and CB2 are found in varying organ systems and neurotransmitter systems throughout the body. And you can see them listed here, like in the lungs, there are CB1 and CB2 receptors, more predominantly CB1, versus the immune system, very much predominantly CB2 receptor. The CB1 receptor overall really does have to do with your central nervous system and peripheral nervous system function. But at the same time, a lot of these receptors are found throughout the body. And so that speaks to, if cannabis is ingested, then it could actually indirectly work on a lot of different organ systems. And really, the effect of cannabis itself can be very extensive rather than more specific to, if I take, a certain medication that targets certain receptors that are only found in the heart, for example, that's a bit more, specific. Whereas with cannabis, it actually could be a more overarching kind of effect on a lot of different organ systems. Okay. And then the next thing, which leads us into, is our bodies make cannabinoids too. Ooh, I apologize that this image is a little blurry, at least on my screen. Hopefully it's not on yours, but so this is another really great point, and a point that I like to make when I'm talking to healthcare professionals for the first time about cannabis is that, we don't need to be afraid or weary necessarily of cannabinoids and the incorporation of them into our patients' regimens, because, THC and CBD are the cannabinoids that come from the cannabis plant. However, there is AEA and 2AG, which I have further, up on the screen here, and it demonstrates that these are the two cannabinoids actually called endocannabinoids made endogenously in the body. And so that means that our bodies already create these endocannabinoids, and these endocannabinoids function directly with the endocannabinoid system, as I just mentioned, and they also can function indirectly with other systems too. And again, this speaks to the fact that cannabinoid receptors are found throughout the body in a lot of different organ and neurotransmitter systems. And yeah, just to give a little more information even about this as well, is that AEA, for example, or anandamide, it's also called, it works on that CB1 receptor. And the analogy that people make is, and that's why I put THC under the anandamide compound, is because a lot of people, they look at, okay, the way that anandamide works in the body is it has a very high affinity to the CB1 receptor, again, closely associated with peripheral nervous system and central nervous system function. And THC has that very similar affinity to that CB1 receptor. And so CB1, of course, being associated with that particular system more than others, that really means that, and that explains why, when ingesting THC and its reaction with the CB1 receptor, why after that, patients might feel a sense of euphoria or might feel high, is because from that reaction of THC and that CB1 receptor. Whereas CBD is very unique and different, just like any other, compound. Every compound works a little bit differently in the body. Just because it's from the same plant doesn't mean it's going to work quite the same. And so CBD, on the other hand, it works differently in that it modulates the overall endocannabinoid system. And it actually has been shown that it doesn't directly interact with CB1 or CB2. And so that's a little, mind-boggling, definitely, and unexpected, because we're used to thinking of certain compounds that are ingested, what receptors do they act with, and then therefore what kind of, effects do they elicit after that. And so it's thought to overall modulate the endocannabinoid system and improve what is called endocannabinoid tone. And endocannabinoid tone is really important because it just speaks to the overall function, whether it's functioning well or not with the endocannabinoid system. All right. And I could go on, but I want to be mindful of time. So next is what you need to know about cannabis, part 6. So there are FDA approved products. This is from one of the textbooks that I reference often. And it just speaks to the fact that there are cannabinoid derived products that are FDA approved. For example, we have Marinol and Sesamet, and those were FDA approved, as you can see with the indication on the screen. Those are, one of them is a synthetic THC and the other one is a synthetic THC analog, meaning that they are not plant derived. Whereas Epidiolex, that was approved in 2018, in particular for rare pediatric seizures, that is actually a plant derived CBD, which is really different and innovative for the pharmaceutical space. Okay, and then the next thing is, I kind of already mentioned a little bit about the Entourage effect, but I think like this image does a really great job. I wish I had made it. I have not, but yeah, it's also from a really great textbook. And so this speaks to all the different particular components that may be in a cannabis chemovar or strain, and how they all can work together in kind of this web and this beautiful net. All right, and then the next thing is, even though CBD is federally legal as per the 2018 Farm Bill that I mentioned a few slides ago, states actually get the final say, and this is really important. So just because it is federally legal doesn't mean that you can get it in every single state. And since I made this, it's possible it changed, because it changes literally every day with the new scope of, regulations going on with CBD and with cannabis in general. But there are certain states, and I would look at your current, wherever you're located, the legislature there, and don't go by the slide because it might be outdated as of, a day or two ago. So I would just check and make sure that, even though you might be interested in incorporating CBD into your practice, we just need to triple check that it actually is federally, that it actually is legal by the state's parameters, because the state legalization and the state regulation outweighs what they say federally for CBD and cannabis. All right. And then the next thing is that there could be drug interactions. And this is really important. So of course, I'm going to call them drug herb interactions, with a drug interacting with the herb cannabis in this particular case. So this is showing that the predominant enzyme system that really works to metabolize cannabis, particularly CBD and THC, is the CYP450 system. And you can see the CYP450 system breakdown. And this breakdown in particular speaks to all of the, drugs that had been all of the drugs that had been FDA approved at the time of the creation of this in 2001, all of the drugs that were on the market and which CYP receptors they are metabolized by. And so, as you probably know, if a medication is being metabolized by a certain receptor, we also don't want, cannabis to be interacting with a drug that is potentially metabolized by the same receptor. That being said, which is why I think also from an integrative health perspective, it's really important to have a very full, holistic view of everything the patient is taking, what drugs they're taking, what supplements they're taking, what herbs they're taking, and then knowing, of course, the background of how those are metabolized in the body, because at the end of the day, we are always looking for benefit outweighing the risk. And I don't want cannabis or CBD or anything to be viewed as a panacea, because I personally do not think it is. I think that it's great for certain ailments and conditions and everything, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be a cure-all, and certain patients might not be a good fit for it. In particular, I have the 3 red flag medications that if I see these on anyone's drug list, whether it's CBD or cannabis related, I will always say no, because to me, the risk outweighs the benefit. All right. And then the last thing, CBD isn't going away, as you probably know. So this is just an illustration that I found the other day, looking at product sales in the millions. So it's a big market, of course. And I do think that it is something that patients are going to continue talking about and continue asking about, and really want guidance from their healthcare professional. All righty. And that was my presentation for today.
Well, fantastic. Thank you. And thanks for getting those slides together for us too. Those visuals are always helpful.
Absolutely.
So we have a question that came into the Q&A, but, and you answered some of them that came in ahead of time. We did have some questions that came in advance. So if we can take the last few minutes and answer a few of these. Thank you. That would be great. So one asked, if a patient doesn't know what product to start with, how do I know what products are safe to recommend?
See, this is a really good question. And I think I'd love to talk about this more offline as well, because I think it's a bit more complicated. And I think it depends on what the patient is looking to achieve, because different products have different components in them. If you're looking for like a CBD specific product versus, a product that might have CBD and other minor cannabinoids, are you looking for a product that might have, a little bit of THC as well? Because those could be very different. Not every CBD product has THC and vice versa. And then also too, it depends a lot on the patient's lifestyle. So if the patient, for example, has the government related job, I would never recommend anything that has any % of THC in it, because they could be randomly drug tested, or if they're in, like when I was in school, we got randomly drug tested as well. And so it really depends on the patient's lifestyle and what their overarching goal is for using CBD. And for me, that's like the first question I always ask is, why CBD? There are so many herbs, so many other modalities, that you could possibly look into. So what is drawing you to ask me, today about CBD, and what is your overall goal? Because, maybe it's actually the best combination is one herbal supplement, an herbal tea, and like CBD together. So yeah, it really is patient specific. So I hope that's a satisfying answer.
Absolutely. Yes. And we always say to at Realm of Caring, the quality of your product matters. And so looking into those, COAs and
yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good point too. If you want to learn more about products themselves, is like, that's that was the 11th thing that almost made it into my deck was like that the importance of COAs. So COAs are certificate of analyses, and every single brand should be doing the appropriate third-party lab testing. And so the COAs kind of are this, extensive lab report that is a public document. And so whether the brand actually chooses to publish it on their website, some of them do that, where you're able to just click, the COA off the product page, and they're supposed to be doing testing per batch, not just once. So you should be able to click that. And if you can't, and you don't see it there, then I would just reach out to the brand, just message them, and they should be more than willing to send them to you. If they are not willing to send them to you, or, they make up some silly excuse, then to me, that is a red flag of maybe they're not doing the right level of testing. And so I would just be weary of that. But yeah, thank you for bringing up the COA. That's a very good point.
Yes, absolutely. And then I'll take one of the questions from our audience who said that they learned so much from your session today. They already had a solid knowledge of cannabis through their work, but for example, they had never heard of the endocannabinoid tones. So thanks for going over that. So they asked, do you have any opinion on minor cannabinoids other than CBD that have a high potential that haven't gotten the spotlight that CBD has?
Yes, definitely. Oh, I love talking about this. CBD and CBD and THC, as we know, are cannabinoids. They're considered major cannabinoids. And the major cannabinoids, they're really called major because they're generally found at like the highest concentrations in the cannabis plant, not because they're like more important therapeutically or anything, in my opinion. I just think they're found at higher percentages, so they're easier to isolate for studies. But that being said, cannabinol or CBN or cannabigerol are the top two that I think are particularly interesting. And so cannabigerol has been studied for, I always remember like G for gut. So it's been studied for gut and for glow. I made that up. That's not really that good, but it's for gut and also for skincare. So that's how I remember CBG is really great for those two things. And then CBN is really great for sleep. That is the where most of the research has been done. There is some really cool research on CBN and pain as well. So I do think that could be something that could help. But I also think that when we influence sleep, we just indirectly/directly just influence so many other amazing things. So I think looking at the benefits of minor cannabinoids is going to become more and more of a big topic of discussion.
Yes, great. And so another question from our audience, what amount of and potency of THC and CBD would you comfortably recommend a patient to use daily, no matter what they are suffering from?
Ooh, this is a great question, because I mean, to modulate your endocannabinoid tone and to optimize the way that your endocannabinoid system works is ideal. So, I mean, if someone is looking to incorporate CBD and it is safe for them, depending on, their lifestyle and their drug choices, and like, as in their prescription meds and everything, like I would recommend always start low and go slow is what everyone says, but I add another part to that and I say stay low after, because I do think that like we don't need to be taking like hundreds and hundreds of milligrams to have the overall benefit. I think that like we should try to figure out what is the lowest amount we can take to have the benefit. And I also think that there are other ways, depending on, again, what your patient is interested in. If it's overall wellness versus like, some sort of like joint pain or something, there are different ways in which we can look at it systemically as well as, locally. So systemically would be, what can we consume, whether it's like a tincture or, I'm not a huge fan of gummies, but that's another discussion, or like a capsule, or something like that systemically. But then there's also, locally, which I would describe as like, like a cream or a lotion or a patch or something that can be applied to a specific area. And I think if you are looking at like pain, for example, taking something systemically as well as on the direct location will get it from two different ways. So I think it depends on what the patient wants. But if just like overall wellness, I know people who take it for overall wellness and they take like 10 milligrams a day. I also know people who take 50. And that's like what I was trying to get at with, like there isn't one dose fits all, unfortunately. And like there's someone who might be your twin who might take something different. And there also might be your mom who will take double or triple of what you take, and your dad might take half of what you take. So it's like, it's not gender dependent or, weight dependent or anything really. It's more dependent on how much experience does that person have in cannabis and taking it before. And so I always say start low. So like you could even start at 5 milligrams, but I think starting at 10 is probably plenty for someone to start. And then that's what I really like about like with the tinctures or the oil-based formulations is that you can titrate up a little bit, like you can add a little bit more if you feel like you need it, or on certain days, if you don't feel like you need as much, you can always take a little bit less.
That's great. Yes, perfect advice. And there's a couple of other good ones. I know that we're a little short on time, but if you have a moment, there's a couple of great ones that I'd love to ask.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm available. Yes.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So this one said, let's see, I've heard about a waiting period between consumption and surgery. What would you advise as far as waiting period if you're on cannabinoid therapy? So when should you stop before you're expecting surgery to come up?
So I think it depends what kind of surgery, like how invasive it is there going to be general anesthesia? And I also don't like to give any advice with surgery unless the surgical team knows what's going on. So I would really hope that in that context, that whomever the surgery team or the surgeon that you're interacting with or your patient's interacting with, that they are aware that the patient is taking cannabis even now, even though they're not undergoing surgery right now. Because I think like if you have a healthcare professional that can work with the surgery team, that's really like the dream scenario, because there isn't like a steadfast rule by any means. I mean, I would not personally recommend taking cannabinoids a few days before in general, but I don't know what kind of surgery. Is it like dental surgery? Is it,
Right.
Like a breast reduction? A lot of different things. So it just depends on what kind. And I mean, you're welcome to reach out to me and we can definitely chat more about that offline, but it's very patient specific and like scenario specific.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Case dependent. Yeah, that makes the most sense. Okay. And then finally, do you see more universities coming online to start teaching upcoming physicians more about the potential of cannabis as complementary treatment options to conventional protocols?
So yeah, I do. And I from at least my vantage point is that there are more universities and like medical schools and pharmacy schools that are looking to incorporate more of this knowledge and of like actual modules within the curriculum, which I think is really incredible. So they're starting it there. And then there are other like degree programs like the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. They just started a master's in cannabis therapeutics. I think as of now, it's like been 2 years since they've had the program. But that is also like, if you're looking for a full on like degree program, there are things like that. I work with a platform called Medical Cannabis Mentor, and they have incredible resources there. They have a physician specific course, and I helped write the pharmacy specific course that delves into what those healthcare professionals would need to know. And so if you're interested, you're welcome to reach out to me, or I can send the links to Sasha as well to find that information. Those are more certificate programs. So it depends on like what level of interest you have in delving into it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for answering the questions from our community and leading us through this great presentation. And we will have the recording uploaded, so it will be available in our healthcare practitioner portal on our website. Dr. Swathi, we just thank you so much for your expertise, and we hope to have you on again soon to answer some more questions. That would be wonderful.
Definitely. Yes. Just let me know what I can do to help. And yeah, this was lovely. I appreciate it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. And we hope that you stay well, and we'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.